Hey, welcome back to Finding Freedom. This is your host, John Odermatt. And today we're going to be exploring the growing movement to enshrine citizen only voting laws in state constitutions and to protect the integrity of elections across America. Let's get into it.
We are born free, and we will die free. The time in between, though, that's complicated. In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. And great to have you here today. Going to have an awesome conversation around voting and the importance of citizen-only voting. I'll introduce my guest in just one moment. Before I do, I got to talk about my favorite coffee sponsor of this show, Fox and Sons Coffee. It's what I start every morning with, either a nice tall cup of French press made coffee or an espresso. Either way, it's my favorite. You can get your own today by going to Fox and Sons, that's FOXNSONS.com, and putting promo code John in for 15% off an order of $40 or more. Let's move on and introduce my guest for today. It is Charlie Kolean. He is a Texas State Director for Americans for Citizen Voting, an organization dedicated to protecting election integrity by ensuring that only U.S. citizens can vote in American elections. He recently authored a Washington Examiner op-ed, which highlighted the growing problem of foreign nationals participating in local and state elections. Charlie, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. This is an important topic, of course. Especially in today's day and age, where we have a lot happening now with a current president who is doing some deportations, and when we look back on pretty near-term previous elections in 2020, there's some questions around who voted, how many of people who weren't citizens maybe voted. So I think this is something that I don't know a lot about, and maybe my audience doesn't know either. So I think it's a chance for really you to help to educate us today. So I think a good place to start is if you could just kind of, I guess, first take us through, how did you get involved in this and what really made you passionate about trying to bring this message to the masses?
Yeah, well, I've been an activist, party leader, candidate, campaign staffer for the last 10 years, basically, always having one of those different roles. I started working with American Citizens Voting, I believe it was in the 2022 election cycle. We're a group that's focused on one sole mission, and that's making sure that there's one vote per one U.S. citizen. We've really, the method we use to do this is statewide constitutional amendments where we believe we can get them passed. So, for example, in Texas, it took 3 years to get where we are today. But in November, there's going to be a proposition, Prop 16, that will appear on the ballot, where it's a very simple question. Should only U.S. citizens be allowed to vote in all of Texas's elections? So that will go to the voters of this November. It's an off-year election. And if it passes, it will amend the Constitution to make sure that only U.S. citizens can vote in Texas's elections.
I mean, to me, and to probably many of our listeners, they hear that, should it only be U.S. citizens voting? And it's like, yeah, of course. So I'm just curious, with this initiative, what kind of polling are you seeing? How's it looking right now going into it?
Yeah, well, I think this is a really good question that you just asked. So a lot of people think, well, yeah, isn't this like a no-brainer? Shouldn't only U.S. citizens be able to vote? How do non-citizens vote? That's a big question. So when a state has something called home rule, what that means is a local government can elect to use home rule to say, hey, we're going to choose who can vote in our local elections. So, for example, San Francisco, Chicago, Washington, D.C., they choose who votes in their local elections. I mean, there were non citizens voting in all three of those major liberal cities. And with this constitutional amendment, it would make sure that cities in Texas do not choose to use home rule to say, hey, we're going to allow non citizens to vote in our local elections. And this is a very popular thing. I mean, some people like to paint this as a controversial issue, but have no fear or no confusion around this. It's not at all.
Mhm.
So this needed 2/3 of the people in Texas's House and Senate to get out to appear on the ballot. So that means we needed to work with Democrats. We had a very robust strategy to work with Democrats in the House, and we're very thankful that they did vote for this. And then the polling that we've done on this, 88% of Texans are in favor of only U.S. citizens voting in elections. So I know that may come as not so much of a surprise, probably to a lot of your listeners and viewers.
Mhm.
But we did have it polled just to be able to say, hey, this is a non-controversial thing. This is bipartisan, even.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about, you talked about a strategy that you had with Democrats to get them on board. Can you share kind of like some details behind that strategy?
Yeah, definitely. So this took two legislative sessions to pass both houses.
Mhm.
We tried in the previous session, 2023. We were unsuccessful because we didn't effectively, speak with Democrats on this. And then in 2025, this year, we really effectively changed a lot of our messaging. And so I think a lot of people were confusing this as an immigration issue. Oh, this is about stopping the illegals from voting. This is about
Mhm.
stopping, non-citizens who aren't supposed to be here from voting. But that's not really what this issue is about. This issue is about citizenship, the responsibilities that come with it, and having safe and secure elections. So we really made this an issue that the Democrats saw as like, well, number one, it's very, very popular. So why would we want to have this become a political liability for us? And then number two, this is common sense. So why would we ever want to let our voters know we could be going the way of San Francisco, of Chicago, of Washington
Mhm.
D.C.? I mean, the Democrats know there are certain House districts where they hold by a very small, thin margin. And that margin is only going to get smaller as they move further to the left. So I think this was pretty effectively framed as a common sense thing that they should get behind, where they can say, "Hey, yeah, we're reasonable Democrats," and thankfully they went with that strategy, and this will appear on the ballot.
So, like you kind of alluded to earlier, Texas, 88%, of the population there supporting it, or I should
Yeah.
say, I guess, with the voting population supporting it. What about other states? Maybe Texas isn't as surprising that you get support there, but are you testing this out, trying to get it passed in other states?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So we've done this successfully in 15 states so
Oh,
far.
great.
So we've gotten a constitutional amendment on, and it's passed. Every time this appears on a statewide ballot, it passes.
Hmm.
The fight has always been with having it appear on the ballot. So every time it's appeared on the ballot, it's been done through the legislator. So typically, it requires 2/3 of the House and the Senate to get on there. And when we haven't made it on, it's typically because of a lack of priority. I would say,
Mhm.
the leadership in the state says, is this an issue? Is it not? And they choose to push it off a session. There is a large campaign going on in Michigan right now, and this is being done by petition circulation. So this, I believe, would be the first state to use petition circulators to have it appear on the ballot, and it's going quite well up there. So I do believe
Okay.
in 2026 this will be on the ballot in Michigan.
Very cool. So you talked of, in Texas, at least, the legislators there not wanting to appear far left to protect themselves in some of these, swing districts with close margins. I'm curious, where is, a lot of the opposition to this coming from? Obviously it's the left, but The left is sort of a wide spectrum. Some people might not agree with that, but I think there's a difference between
Yeah.
your blue haired college Marxists and your maybe union blue collar worker. So where is this opposition coming from?
Yeah, well, I mean, like every group, there's always going to be detractors,
Hmm.
and I would say some of our detractors say, "Hey, this is making it harder to vote. This is, decreasing people's access to the ballot box." But that's absolutely false, because the argument they always say is, "Well, you're putting more qualifications on what it would take for someone to vote, and if someone's a U.S. citizen, they can already vote. So why make them prove it?" In my opinion, and I've been in this space since 2022, uh, you would be hard pressed to find the person who actually wants to register to vote and is a legal U.S. citizen who has all the right qualifications to vote, but just lacks the paperwork, and they've been denied that opportunity
Hmm.
to the right to vote. I mean that you are looking for where's Waldo that and it doesn't exist. I mean, I like from being in the space for a long time, we've never found that where's Waldo type person out there.
Yeah. So, like, what is the paperwork? Are we talking driver's license? Is that essentially what it is?
Yeah, I mean that's essentially it. I mean, every state gets to determine what they're going to use to enforce this and how they're
Mhm.
going to use the procedural process. But I mean, it's a driver's license, it's a passport, it's a birth certificate. It's one of those documents
Yeah.
that pretty much every upstanding citizen has. So
And
has
and
one of them
how
at least.
and at what point is that at the obviously a lot of people are already registered to vote, right? So how is their citizenship then verified? Is that something they're taking to the polling station or how's that done?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's done differently in every state. So,
Mhm.
for example, like Texas just passed a law where now the attorney general can actually prosecute election fraud. So, my guess is they'll give an opinion with how they'd want something like this to actually be implemented. But this isn't. It's not meant to be controversial. This is not meant to be something to clean the voter rolls and start over at zero. This is meant to be to make it an obvious thing that only U.S. citizens should be voting in all elections, and that includes local elections too, because that's where we see these non-citizens voting.
Mhm.
Is places like the Chicago school board election. We see them voting in San Francisco. We see them voting in Washington D.C. So that's what this is meant to do.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, now that I think I'm picking up more of like the influence here of it. It's not necessarily unlike our federal government. This non-citizen voting is really impacting more the localities and mayors and maybe district attorneys and those types of people. Is that accurate?
Totally, totally. Well, that's where we see non-citizens being allowed to vote
Mhm.
is at the local level. If a place says, "Hey, we're going to use home rule. We're going to say whoever can vote in our local elections." That's where we see it happening in that instance. But for example, 2024, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, came out with a press conference where they announced they removed over 1 million people from the voter rolls in Texas. Over 5,000 of those people were non-citizens, and almost 2,000 of those people had a voting record. So who knows what elections those people were voting in?
Mhm.
But I mean that is like a verifiable instance where non-citizens were voting in Texas.
Yeah. So what would you say in your opinion, being in this space for a while here, what is the most misunderstood thing from your perspective when it comes to non-citizens voting? I kind of referenced earlier when I was, introducing you or early in the
Yeah.
conversation about how there's this big, people think of 2020 and where did all these votes come from? Is there anything to that? Is that just speculation in your opinion?
Well, I would say only US citizens voting or non-citizens voting. I mean, people think about the border being wide open, people running
Mhm.
across and running straight to the ballot box. And this is more of a movement of citizenship and, the precious rights and privileges that come
Mhm.
with it, like voting. So ultimately, in this country, you're one of two people. You're either a citizen or you're a guest. If you're a U.S. citizen, you take a longer term view on this country. I think that comes with more responsible thinking, more stewardship, and those are the people who ultimately should be making the decisions on things like who's leading your community, your country, what policies are we adopting, and if you're not a U.S. citizen, ultimately you're a guest, and you won't go over to someone's house as a guest
Mhm.
and tell them how to rearrange their furniture, what artwork to put up on the wall, or any of those decisions that someone living in the house should actually be making.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. Texas, obviously, we've referenced Texas. Is there another? And you said what? 15 other states have implemented similar legislation.
Yeah.
Is there a leader in this space, a state that has this, nailed down that it's like you could point to them and say, "That's what we want in every single state."
The leaders in these spaces have typically been states where there's a two-thirds Republican majority in the House and the Senate.
Mhm.
Those are the ones we've been able to talk a lot of sense into and get them to pass it. Missouri, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Iowa. Those are some states where we've gotten this passed successfully. And we who's standing in the way of a lot of this stuff? It's typically Democrats playing games where they realize, they say, "Hey, yeah, we agree with this, but we're not going to give the Republicans a win." They see this as a Republican thing.
Mhm.
So in Texas, we were able to very successfully navigate that by saying, "Well, no, it's not really giving the Republicans an actual win. I mean, what it is here is it's common sense, and you're avoiding any major liability that could come back and haunt you during the election."
Mhm.
So that's I think how a lot of these conversations end up happening.
I'm curious, like when it comes to a naturally born citizen and a naturalized citizen. Do you have any data, or does your group dig into the data to see the differences? Because like my guess would be that naturalized citizens probably might support this even more so than people who are born here, just because
Yeah.
they've done more to earn it.
Well, we conducted a focus group with naturalized and first generation
Hmm.
Americans, and I think this was in 2023 when we did this.
Yeah.
And it was a very eye opening experience to hear them talk about their journey to the United States, the process they needed to go through to become a U.S. citizen, and to really hear their story. And I mean, it's powerful. So we don't have any data where it's non it's first generation Americans or naturalized versus ones who were born here. But I mean, just hearing those stories from firsthand perspective, I mean, yes, obviously, I think anyone who goes through the process overwhelmingly supports making sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in our elections.
Hmm. So people hearing this, they might think, "Oh, geez, I'm in one of these states. Is there anything I need to do to make sure that I'm able to vote?" So, is there something that people should be doing to make sure that they're still registered? That if their legislation is passed in a state and they've done something to make sure to verify these voter rolls, is there something that citizens should be doing to make sure that they're still able to vote when they go to the polls in November?
I believe every state we've passed this in, people have had no problem continuing to vote. Like I said, this isn't a bill or a law or anything where it's trying to
Hmm.
clear the voter rolls and have it be built over from zero. This is literally just to make sure only U.S. citizens are voting in elections, and more importantly, making sure local governments aren't saying, "Hey, we're going to have an election and everyone who lives here is going to be able to vote." So, I mean, that's really the biggest change we're seeing happen quite
Hmm.
frequently.
Makes sense. So, in your opinion, why is obviously you're dedicating, your time to this, you're passionate about it. Why do you think that it's so important to protect citizens only voting in the United States?
Well, I mean, I didn't know about this issue until I started working on it. So
Mhm.
it's really grown on me, and I think it's one of the most pressing issues of our time. With citizenship comes some precious rights, responsibilities, and duties. And I believe it is a duty to go out there and vote as a U.S. citizen. I believe it's your right as well, and we got to make sure that's not diluted by non-citizens. We respect people who have gone through the process to become citizens. And like I said, you're taking a longer term view on this country as a U.S. citizen. I mean, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm not a citizen anywhere else. I want to make sure the United States is as good as possible to live in for myself and future generations. And I just think like that's something that a lot of people agree with. I mean, in fact, like I said, 88% of Texans, they agree that only U.S. citizens should be voting in elections. And and when I talk to people, one of the most common questions I get is this really an issue? And the fact is, it is. It's
Mhm.
pressing, and that's why we have Prop 16 on the ballot in Texas.
Well, I mean, it definitely is an issue. I mean, we can even look outside of the United States and over in Europe, what's happened with, this mass migration. And, um, not necessarily that the migration itself is going to change the makeup of the countries or who's voting, but over time it certainly will. And like you talked about earlier, it's not like illegal immigrants are coming over here and just voting and changing our elections, but having that standard in place. It's the United States of America. In order to vote here, you need to be a citizen. You need to be bought in. You either need to have been born here or have gone through the process of becoming a citizen. And a lot of my listeners are going to obviously totally agree with this, but it's not surprising to me that there is pushback on it because I think there's pushback from the left on, you know, is citizenship really that important? Kind of like that core issue. Is that something that you've given thought to? I mean, I know we talked a little bit about what is driving the left, but like taking it a layer deeper, like what's the philosophy behind leftists who would try to squash this issue?
Well, yeah. I mean, you see some people say, okay, well, if someone's living in a local area, they're paying taxes, they're contributing, they're a resident, they should be able to vote in these local elections. These people affect their local life, and that's true. Local politics does affect people's life when they live there. Uh, but you wouldn't say, okay, I go on vacation, to, let's say France or somewhere, and I'm paying taxes. I'm going out to eat. I'm paying sales tax. All the duties, whatever they have over there.
Hmm.
I don't expect to vote in a French election. I mean, that's almost comical to say,
Hmm.
and I think too, like if they love living in the United States, if they're a permanent resident, green card holder, they're working towards it. I mean, they should become a U.S. citizen. They should go through the formal process. They should earn the right to vote as a
Hmm.
citizen. And that's how they take that longer term view. So I think that's why some people say, oh, they live here, they should be able to, participate immediately politically. But I mean, it's a right that's earned with citizenship.
Yeah.
And it's a process a lot of people agree you should go through.
Last question for you, Charlie. Where can people learn more about you, learn more about Americans for Citizens Voting, and
Yes.
and find your Washington Examiner op-ed?
Yeah. So very simple. If you get on Google and type in Americans for Citizens Voting, will be the first link that pops up. Myself on Twitter, on Instagram at Charlie Kolean, and really can't thank you enough for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Charlie. We appreciate it here.
Thank you.
Bye now. All right, that is a wrap for today's interview with Charlie Kolean. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully, you learned something about a really important subject and something that I think could impact us for generations to come if we are not proactive about protecting and limiting it to citizens only voting. So I want to thank Charlie again for coming on the show and sharing his knowledge today. If you like this show, if you like what we're doing here at Lions of Liberty, please consider joining us on Patreon or on Locals. And our new group, our new patron group, we've now renamed it to the Paula Pricks. It's no longer the Lions of Liberty Pride. We're the Paula Pricks, which is a play off of our Politics podcast. That's with tick spelled like the blood sucking insect. Of course, you'll get the Politics podcast if you're subscribed to the Lions of Liberty Network. You can also subscribe to the Solo Politics podcast feed. So please consider go ahead and doing that. With that being said, I will see you all next week with another great interview. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and those fires of liberty burning.